What's up, guys, and welcome to this snippet. So, as promised, every Monday I'll be releasing snippet of codes which you can implement in your environment. It can be optional. Sometimes looking at someone code, it gives you an idea of what to do in your own programming. Okay, like I have actually gained a lot from looking at people's code, and I think it's okay if you look at someone's code without even understanding the code, but looking at the procedure the fellow use and how the code is being implemented, it makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, so this particular snippet is a function that works. I'm actually working on a POS application, and then with every POS, there should be a model where the customer gets to make a purchase order. Now, if you are not into retail, that's fine. But if you need more info, you can just listen or skip this. Purchasing order is basically like assuming I own a restaurant, or yes, a restaurant. So every time we make purchases, right? In a restaurant, you have to make purchases to actually match your stock and keep production. If you don't purchase items, you can't make production. So when someone is using my POS application, the goal is actually to give them a full control over the application. Like they don't need any extra work. Like there are instances where someone uses an application for making purchases, and then they also have an Excel sheet where they make list of things they need to purchase. Some even have a to-do notebook where they write like, I'm going to buy garlic 10 quantity, I'm going to buy this. I mean, like, it's actually cool, but it's a hassle. I just want my application to work as a standalone. So I have this model for purchasing. Now, when someone makes a purchase order, it saves in a document, and then this same purchase order can be edited. But after it's been approved by someone with a higher clearance, there's no chance you can edit it again. Because it's assumed when it's approved, we are going into purchasing, right? So like, there's no point to approve a document and have access to edit again. This is just a brief of the function, okay? But whilst building the function, I hate the fact that you have to reuse code. For instance, you make one code to do a specific task, and then after that you come again to make another. Like when you are making same scenario, you write the code again. And some people even have a habit of copying and pasting codes. I mean, not some people, almost everyone. I also copy codes sometimes, like my codes. I copy my codes because I need to reuse. For instance, if I print hello world here, at the point I need to print hello world again, I need to actually print hello world. But that's just hello world. If it's a big code, like let me say 100 lines of code just for a function, I have to be copying and reusing. Now that's so boring. When I started programming, I used to do that, and it was so boring. So I read about the bad aspect of reusing codes, like copying and pasting, and it actually makes your code look tall and then like unnecessary. So what I adapt was like, when I'm using a function or a code for the second time, I make it a function, okay, and then I make it dynamic in a sense that I don't need to rewrite the code twice again. It means like in a real life scenario, assuming you grind corn, okay, maybe you have corn that you take it to a grinding mill to actually change it into powder for you. So what I used to do was, every time I'm going to a grinding mill, I buy a new grinding mill, okay, even though I have one grinding mill standing, because that grinding mill can only grind corn. Whenever I need to grind maize, I need to buy a new grinding mill to grind like a separate thing. Okay, it's not like this grinding mill, but it's just the same thing, just that I reuse it in a different scenario. So for instance, if I'm grinding maize right now, okay, I'll put a plate for maize and grind it, and then right now I need to grind yam like fufu. So I just pick the same grinding mill, I place it in a different position, and then I change the plate. So what I do is I change the plate. But when you are doing that, okay, you get to a point where you can have like 10 grinding mills standing in one room, just changing plates. When it's not necessary, when you can just have one grinding mill, then you change plates always. So like that's a more like nice scenario. Like you have one grinding mill standing, and then you have different plates. So like when you need to do this thing, like when you need to grind maize, you put a maize plate. When you need to grind your yam for fufu, you put a different. Now that's just a scenario, and that's not necessary, okay, but it's just to explain how it will make your understanding so easy why it's wrong to reuse code. Now so this is how I've done my function. So I update tables a lot, okay? Like I actually update my databases a lot. I mean, not me only. Anyone who is building an application, you update or like you insert, you delete, like that, those procedures. Now I have a function that actually connects me to my database. Like it's just a class I did, and the class name is a DB handler. So it handles all database. What it does is handle database. Now I have a few functions like count number of rows, fetch rows, like, and then so stars. But I noticed that anytime I'm doing an update, I have to write a bunch of code. Okay, for instance, if I need to update a table, I need to write the update query, write the statement, validate everything, and then boom, I then go to update it. But I realized it was so annoying. Like I thought about changing this structure to make it like one code that I just change the values, okay, for a long time now. So today I got free time and I decided to do it, and this is how the SnipNet works. So you see I have for instance, I have a variable here, and this variable is an array, and the array has like in its elements the table, the columns, the values, and the condition. Okay, now this is still in progress. If you're interested, you can also just continue and complete it, but I'll definitely complete it. Okay, I'll add it to my to-do. Now when I pass this variable into a function which I call like update, okay, so like this is the whole snippet and whatever is relevant for this update class to take work. So I just pass this whole array which contains like my tables, columns, values, and conditions, and I pass it into like a class, like a function in a class. Okay, in my DB handler I have a function inside called update record, and what the update record does is just take these details. So like for instance, if this is like a grinding mill, okay, right now I need to grind yam, so I pass yam details. Okay, let's just say I need to grind yam, I pass yam details, and the yam details I'm using the, so let's say like the table here stands for like the grinding mill I'm using. Fine, I'm using the plate, the yam plate, okay, and then this table here stands for like the yam plate. And then if I take the yam plate and insert it, what do I do now? Okay, this particular plate requires it requires a location, it requires like water, like those stuffs, and then I pass the values. So like this is just the scenario, and then I give a condition, because I actually like, let's put the grinding mill aside. Now if you're thinking about database and then updating, you realize that when you are making a query, okay, you need a table if it's an update, and then you need the columns to update and the values to put in those columns. Now you can either put a condition or not, but it's always advised to put a condition, okay, because you don't know what happens. If I have a table of 1,000 rows and I'm updating all the rows, there's no need for condition, okay, so I just update all the rows. But if I have a table like 1,000 rows and I'm looking for one, just I'm updating 5, that's where I need a condition, because the condition needs to be unique. It's like your phone book, okay, you're updating the contact number of one person, the condition there should be like the person's name, that should be unique, okay. But if you're updating all, you don't need to pass any unique, you just set a condition to now. Now this is my array, the elements and then their values. I take a table, the column, the values, and the conditions. Now I have also implemented error checking, and we'll see that in implementation. Now when we go to the update record function, this is how function looks like. The function should be down somewhere. Okay, so this is how the function looks like. Okay, now by default I set error to 0 because I need to do error checking, and if there's an error, if there's any sign of an error, like we shouldn't proceed, because that's supposed to be the goal. The code is supposed to be like efficient. Okay, so like by default I just define a variable called error and I give it a value of 0. Now this 0 is a string, because like I actually have issues with numbers sometimes. Sometimes, you know, when you set a variable to 0 or 1, a boolean, it gets to a point, even if it's 0, it's true because it's a bool. Okay, I don't know if you can look at data types on your own and then understand. If you're working with boolean data types, okay, at a point when you say 0, okay, it doesn't consider the fact that 0 is 0. Okay, it considers the fact that 0 is something and then it means it's true. Okay, but I can just make this perfect by setting it to true or false. But I also have a bit of issues there that I can, this is not the video to explain that, but I just set the error to 0. Okay, and after setting the error to 0, now what if someone makes a mistake? Okay, this is supposed to be an array. Okay, what if someone makes a mistake and pass a variable? Okay, that is not an array. We shouldn't accept it, right? Because that's the goals. Everything needs to check out. You can't just pass a dummy string into our grinding mill and expect, you can't put air into the grinding mill and expect the grinding mill to be grinding. For instance, this grinding mill is supposed to grind only soft food, okay? You can't put a rock inside, you will spoil the plates. So like what I actually did right now is, after validating and after setting the error variable to proceed, I then check if the details input are actually soft items we can grind, okay? If it's an array, if it's not an array, I set error to 1, okay? Now after setting error to 1, we then proceed, okay? Now yes, we shouldn't proceed after setting error to 1 because it would definitely throw an error. So here I need to change this code, okay? So let's just do it right now, like, because if the error here is 1, I should just exit from here, okay? So I'll just exit from here. Instead of exit, I'll return the statement to kill. I'll just say return okay, I'll return an error, okay? I have this error that also displays a cool error, can't continue, okay? So this is what happens, okay? When we get to this place, we try an error, and the error is like we can't continue. Let me just okay, that's cool. The error says we can't continue, and then we exit from here. But if this is an array, we then proceed and look for our array stuffs, okay? So like in our array, our table name will be called like table, okay? It will be called table. Now these details over here is what we pass into our grinding mill. And if you come to our details, you realize that we have an element with an ID of, this is an associative array, okay? So it has an like a key of table. Now we take the table, and that's our table over here, and our columns are also columns. And then I give a set. I just set to nothing. Set should be null, and I get the values and I get the condition, okay? After getting the values and condition, we then have to also validate our columns and value, okay? For instance, let's put grinding mill aside over here too, and then come to programming scenario. If you are updating a table, okay, and you're updating 2 rows, okay, you need to pass 2 values, okay? It's like you're updating your phone number, okay, and in your phone number the details are the house address and also the phone number, okay? Now if you say you're updating house address and phone number, and you only provide the house address, you didn't provide the phone number, like what should you use to like update the phone number? I hope you understand. Like in this case, we can pass like just an empty field, like nothing, okay, and it will work. But the length should be equal. Like the length should actually be equal. If you're familiar with programming, array length, you have to make sure the lengths are equal. That's why I made the columns an array and then the values an array. The number of elements in this columns should be the same as the number of elements in this, else we should get an error. And when we are done, we'll definitely test these scenarios on my application and see how effective and efficient it is. So we then come to validate the columns and values. First we validate if they are arrays, okay? They should be arrays. So if they are arrays, then if they are not arrays, we throw an error which is 1, okay? So after throwing the error which is 1, we then go ahead to check the counts, okay? In PHP, when you are looking for the length of an array, you count the elements in it, okay? And by count, we have 3. So 3 right now, based on what I'm doing, this should be 3, right? So we have 3, and then that's also valid. Now, after validating our array and the elements, we then loop through the array of the column, okay? We're supposed to loop through the array of the columns and the the values, okay? But we just take 1. I am using columns right now, okay, but you can decide, I'm using the columns, you can decide to use the values. The goal is, if you understand how to access an array element, okay, if you take an array like if you take an array is like a set, okay, and everything, if it's not associative, which is like our columns here, everything is indexed, it counts from 0. So the first element in this array location, if you are referring it to it in this columns, it will be 0. The next will be 1 and then 2. If you are familiar with arrays, which I think is basic, if you've ever tried learning programming, any programming language, I'm not talking about markup languages, okay, like I'm talking about if you ever tried any programming language and you go to the data types, in the data types, if there's an array, okay, and with an array, indexing starts from 0, okay, That's how computer starts counting from. It doesn't start from 1, it starts counting from 0. So if you are looking for this array, okay, if you are trying to access the third element in this columns array, you access it with using like 2. Okay, since this is 0, 1, 2. Now you should understand why I validate the counts now. So logically, no, we have a location here, which when we are accessing, the location will be like column 0. The value for location should also be like value 0. That's why I'm making sure the counts are equal. Okay, now let me explain the for each loop and you understand. So I'm saying for each column as key value. Okay, now I'm making it like an associative array. So I'm saying for each column, okay, as key value, and the key value, you don't see this, but this is how a key value looks like. This is how a key value will look like. This is 0, 1, and this will be this is 1 over here. So this is how like a key value, like they are mapped. Okay, location has a key of 0, remarks have a key of 1, and it continues as I said earlier on. So like for each column as key value, okay, I need just the key, only the key. The key is the important thing I did here. I don't need a value. Okay, I need only the key. And what I do is that when I take the key, as I've taken the key over here, okay, I then loop through the columns. First I loop through the column and I get a column with this key, okay, and I also loop through the values and I get a value with this specific key. Okay, so logically, if we take the first column, which is location, and then column has an index of 0, now I need a 0 key. Okay, now I then come to columns again when I'm iterating, and I said give me column 0. When I get column 0, it's definitely equal to value 0. Like that's how the update should work. Column 0 in our database should be value 0, and that's the scenario. So here I then append to my set. Remember I created an empty set at the top there. Where's my code? You remember this empty set? Now it's just there for a future use, and this is the future usage. I then append this to the set. Now okay, let me cancel this. I was trying to use an if count to actually make some clearance, but it didn't work proper, so let's escape that. Now this is the whole of our iteration. We iterate through our columns, get the key, and then we match the key against columns and values to get it. So we then say in our set, we'll say column is equals to value, and this is our column here, this is our value over here, and we append a question mark. Okay, because like when you're updating a table in PHP, okay, let me just show in SQL, let me show you an example. Okay, I don't have an update statement, but when you're updating, that's how the SQL like write-up should look like. There should be separation between every set. Now there's an issue. Okay, there will be an issue. For instance, when we are done appending, you realize that at the end of our set, okay, we'll definitely have a comma, which we don't need, because you realize I have to call the set before our where. Now what I then go ahead to do is I right trim the whole set. Okay, the whole set. I sensitize the data over here, and then I remove from the end the comma, like the last comma from the whole string. Okay, if you are familiar with programming like PHP, this should be a hassle for you to understand, but if you are not, let me explain to you how this will look like. Okay, so let me just create a dummy here and then use this as an example. Now at the end of running this, okay, at the end of running this iteration, we'll have something like, let me just give space so that will be clear. We'll have something like okay, I think location is first, location is number 1, location will be equals to, and then location details, and then we'll have a comma. So this is the comma that gets to append. So this is the column we get, which is our location column, and this is the value, and this is the value we get, and we should append a comma because like everything should be splitted. Okay, now if we also have like after location, what do we have? I think we have remarks. So we take remarks and we also assign it something like our remark. Okay, there's also another comma based on this. Now what I need to do is after appending, after concatenating everything, okay, this is not appending, this is to concatenate something. That's in programmer saying after concatenating everything, there will be a comma at the end, which we don't need, because when you are running an SQL update with something like this, it will throw an error, tell you there's a syntax error. You should check your version of a database engine. So what we then do over here is to write trim, and when you write trim and move the last comma, like I used this statement, I said write trim set. So logically this will be our set. Okay, this is our set, and we are trimming from the right. Trimming from the right, we are taking away the first comma. So when we trim, this is how our data will now look like, which won't throw error. So that's why I have a sensitized set, which I write trim and take away the comma. Now I hope this is understood. If it's not, please look up online for trimming and stuff. My purpose is just to let you understand the flow. So this is basically not for like someone who doesn't have a programming idea. Okay, this is basically someone who knows how to program and need inspirations on how to make a workflow, like how to make things run. Now if after trimming our set, okay, we then make our SQL query, and this is how our query will look like. We are updating table, which you know where we get the table from. We get table from our array, and then we set our sensitized data, which is valid where condition. Okay, so now this is where I'm supposed to put a distance, because at some point maybe you won't like to put a condition. Maybe you like to set a condition to none. Okay, so I will just say if condition, we'll say if condition is equals to none, then we just give a different else. We take this, we apply the condition, then if it's, we then use the same SQL and remove the condition. So with the first step, if there's no condition, we are updating the whole table and we are setting our sensitized set as it's supposed to be. But if there's this thing, if there's definitely if there's a condition, this works, and then that's it. And then after checking everything, if error is still set to 0, okay, I then use a try, this try catch, and I execute my SQL, and if it's done, I show a success message. If it's not done, I show an error message. And let's intentionally throw errors in this case. Okay, let's intentionally throw errors in this case. So to intentionally throw error, the first error I'll intentionally throw, the first thing I'll do is to like validate that this works. So this is my database, PO transactions. This is my database. No, I'm looking for PO header. So this is my table, and realize that this is 3,000 cities, right? This is definitely 3,000 cities, right? So I'll make this 1,150 cities, and then I'll just update this. And then now when I select from PO header, you should realize that this data will change to 150 cities. Now this is valid, okay? This is valid. And let me bring my application and let's try something. Where's my POS? Okay, this is my POS. And sorry, it looks smaller. Okay, I've actually resized it, and I'm recording this on a big screen. You realize this is 3,000, right? But when I refresh this, okay, it says I need to log in again. Login time pass. I come to inventory, purchase order, and then I edit this specific purchase order. Okay, so we realize when I come to inventory and then purchase order, you realize the total amount is 150, right? This is picking from the database. But when I go to editing, I do some calculations with JavaScript, and based on this total cost, if you calculate this total cost, it should match this. But when I commit, that's when this gets updated. Okay, so now let's say we are editing, and then I set this first purchase. Let me just edit it, edited, and here we can also change the location to like main shop, and with a save. Now it has been saved. That's successful. When I refresh, boom, everything has been saved, and then like no problem. But as I said, we need a problem. Okay, so let's intentionally throw a problem here. The first problem we will intentionally throw is we'll take away the trim, right? So instead of taking away this trim, I will just make it the set instead of the sensitized data. So I told you the set, there will always be comments at the end, right? Now let me refresh this and then update. So you realize there's an error, the error I told you about, and then with what I did is I tried to throw the error, and then you understand where it is. So the message tells us there's an error near where, and then this is the query used. So the query was update PH head, set location is equals to 001, remark is equals to first purchase order edit, total amount is equals to 3,000, which is valid where. So you realize that before the where there's a comma. That's the comma I was talking about. We don't need this comma. If you leave this comma in an SQL, we throw an error. Okay, so we don't need this comma. So what we have to do is take our code back to where it was, and then with this set update again, and then there's success. Now another error we need to throw. Okay, now let's make sure these values do not match. Okay, edit PO. Let's make sure no, this is wrong file I'm opening. PO, let's make sure these values did not match. So I'm taking total. Okay, there's total cost here. Now I realize our column has like 3 counts, and then our values have 2. So what we'll then do now is test this also and see the error it will probably give us. Now after I refresh and then save, okay, it doesn't throw anything, but it's definitely supposed to throw an error. Okay, so now this is one of some of the debugging steps we have to do. So meaning this is not true. Okay, so else, okay, let me just throw it here and see if it works. Else Anton error saving PO contact system administrator. Okay, hopefully, let me just refresh. There's no refresh needed. Let me try and see if it throws the error I want over here. Okay, let's go. So the error won't also throw here. I think the error should be thrown somewhere else. The error should be thrown in our DB handler. Now this is some of the stuff we'll have to deal with. Okay, this is where I told you about this false and true stuff I don't trust. Okay, so now let me throw that same error over here and then let's see what happens. Now I told you I hate copying and pasting. Yeah, that's true, but this is just a lie and a string. Okay, so instead of Anton, I change this to this error, and then boom, we should definitely have an error. Still there's no error showing, but it's supposed to show an error as to why we couldn't proceed. Now let me just check our logs and see what's okay. Undefined array key 2. So that's the issue. I told you we needed to die at a point, right? I didn't die at the point. Now let me show you. Let me just drag this here to the screen and see if you can see this as well. Okay, this can see. So realize in my console log, okay, if I proceed to save this, the message I get here is undefined array key 2, which is valid. Okay, this error is so valid in the sense that this is array key 2 for columns. Now it's trying to look for array key 2 for this, but it's not getting it. Okay, so let me just go DB handler and see what we can do to throw that error I ideally want. Okay, where do I have to validate a count? If count, okay, throw error. Okay, I won't throw error 1. I'll just return this over here. I'll return this and exit the code. So this is definitely not the same. I'll return this, and I should make the message more descriptive. So I'll just say columns and value mismatch. So I think this is definitely descriptive. Columns and values mismatch. This is definitely descriptive, and hopefully if my implementation is valid, okay, please be valid, we should get our error. So yes, columns and values mismatch, which is true, okay, because there's a mismatch over there. Now let's try another error and see what happens. So I take this out because this is not needed. I think the if or else is not even needed, and then I just bring. So we have our total amount there, and then what's another error we said to check out for? If it's not an array, okay, if it's not an array, we need to return this as well and exit. So we return so I'll just say columns or values not an array. So this is definitely for a programmer understanding, but that's fine. Let's just leave it for anyone. So to just fix it over here, we change this to an empty string. Okay, we change this to an empty string. This is no more an array, it's now a string, and with a save. Okay, this is not also giving us the error we need. Let me just check our log, and then it says what type error. It says type error count. This is supposed to exit, not proceed. Okay, so I don't know why it's passing. Maybe I should pass it died at that point, which I feel like is not needed. But oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay guys, I'll have to fix this somewhere somehow, but this video is taking longer than expected, so I'll just return my code to how I need it to work, and then with a comfortable save button, this should actually save and tell me success. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video, and then yes, I'll record more for you.